What's going on, everyone, and welcome once again to another Facts Project podcast. I am your host, James Graham, Master Facts Boys. Today, I have a very special guest, Matthew Rosenberg. As a matter of fact, there's a little history with this because there's only two people that have ever been on this podcast that have ever had to do projects with Wu-Tang. That's you.
That's me. There you go.
I work in the nightclub business, so I've obviously worked with them in the past, and obviously you've worked with Ghostface Killer and RZA in the past as well. So this is actually a little bit of a true history happening right now.
There you go. All right, not bad.
Definitely. So today, of course, we're here to talk about Image Comics, If Destruction Be Our Lot. Obviously, the Lincecum speech done by Abraham Lincoln about the perpetuation of our political institutions. And sir, you have a way with 5-word titles, I gotta say.
I like a long title. I'm not gonna lie.
That's good, man. You don't leave anything to the imagination.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of just like a guy's name as the name of your book. It's like come on, give me something to chew on.
Yeah, because could you imagine if this book was called Abe?
I'm sure there's some people who wish it was called Abe, but they'll read it and be like, "Why don't you just call it Abe?" But yeah, not for me.
Hopefully that wasn't a rebuttal as part of the elevator pitch.
No one's complained about it yet, the title yet. But I wait till it comes out and then everyone will complain. Everyone finds something to complain about.
Excellent. So of course this is a year from these two books behind me. We're taking everyone down with us. Obviously a fantastic book that I was able to read. Nice. It reminded me of 1960s, 1970s spy thrillers, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It was a fantastic book, but obviously we have a lot of news, of course, with you as well with this particular book. So to get right into it, the comic, If Destruction Be Our Lot, presents a world where humanity is extinct, robots have inherited Earth. What do you think it's ultimately saying about what it means to be human?
Yeah, I mean that's a look. We're early in the book. I haven't talked about it a lot. It's not out, so that's a hard one. So bear with me as I get through it. Mm-hmm. At the core of the book, we come into a world where it's just robots and they're pretty content. They pretty much like their life. They don't like the way humans got in the way of everything. And then you meet the animatronic Abraham Lincoln, who's escaped from a theme park, and he just doesn't quite fit in with anyone. He's on his own, and he sort of doesn't understand his purpose, and he feels very lonely.
Yeah.
And I think that is the sort of driving humanity of the book is this idea that like he's never alone. He's in a busy city. He's surrounded by robots, but there's just a divide and how we can be in a crowd and we can be in the most populated place on earth, or we can be surrounded by people and still feel isolated if we don't make that connection and that bond to other people and find some common ground with people. And so I think that is at the driving force of what we're talking about with humanity and all that.
Yeah. When you think about it, the way that the book is crafted, like the normal aspect of post-apocalyptic means that there's been like this utmost destruction. The way that the book is kind of like molded almost seems as though it's very calm, and it's like the city is like definitely moving in a direction that seems to be working for everyone except for one person. So is it just like almost outside of being post-apocalyptic? Is it post-human philosophical fiction?
Yeah, it's funny because like post-apocalyptic is such a catch-all. Like people, it means something to people, and they're like, "Oh, I know what that is," and that's not really what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah, I think post-human is the better term. It's a study of a world where humans were made obsolete at a certain point, where we've been replaced, and that's it. And it's not some violent war, and it's not some plague, and it's not anything like that. It's just we were replaced and we're gone. And like why that happened and how that happened is something that we'll get into later in the book. But like, we wanted to study just this idea that there's this sort of idea when humanity talks about certain things where I think a lot of people, the way they frame the world is very human centric. It's very self centered, and it's not about the world as a as a giant ecosystem that we're just a small part of. And so in this book, the things go extinct. Animals go extinct every single day. We lose
Yeah,
plants, we lose animals, we lose insects. We're not impervious to that. It could be us just as easily as anything else, and the world would go on without us. We're illustrating that in the book, that it's not violent and it's not tragic and it's not anything. They're just gone,
yeah.
and it's just ironic that the thing that we're focusing on is one of our own creations, who sort of replaced us as the dominant thing on the food chain.
Definitely. Like I think the word that like kind of like comes out a little bit more clear is just it's bleak. It's a bleak future. Like
Yeah.
the book describes, of course, Abe being of someone that obviously was a robot in a museum,
Hmm.
and more so discussed the history of what humans basically went through to a lot of other human beings,
Yeah.
and notably his major function is now gone. He has nobody to tell that to.
Yeah.
So it's like the book is more so about like I heard you talk about this finding a friend,
Yeah.
and how does that simple idea like kind of like reshape what could otherwise be bleak?
Yeah. I think it's a tough question. I think that there's a very simple way to take these big ideas and this idea of this post-human world and this robotic world and reframe it as a very personal story and very intimate. And obviously, like a lot of what we're dealing with is hard sci-fi and big sci-fi science fiction ideas and the end of the world or what have you. But it's also in that you find the things that are very relatable and very common. And in some ways, I think it's we've been working on this book for a really long time.
Mm,
And so what the book has been sort of touching on has changed, whether like it was like, well, it's COVID or it's the rise of AI or it's, the collapse of Twitter or whatever it is. Like there's all these things that like we find that the book is about, because at the heart the book is about a person looking for a connection.
yes.
It's about someone feeling lonely and wanting to find someone else who they can talk to and be with. And I think that quest, while we start from a very bleak place, we start from an absurdly bleak place in
Yeah.
the post-human world. The quest is optimistic. It's hopeful. It's about. I mean, if he succeeds in finding a friend, then it's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
If he can do it here, anyone can do it anywhere.
Yeah, for the most part. I think when the initial announcement came out, I thought one thing, and then the more I read into it, I felt another thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
of course, if you're thinking post-apocalyptic, you're thinking pessimistic about humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But in this type of aspect, when you're thinking about the actual journey that Abe is about to go on, it's
Mm-hmm.
quietly optimistic,
Yeah.
and it's almost like the ETs of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Wally leaving Earth
Yeah. Yeah.
type of deal. It's like there's nothing else for me to do here.
Yeah.
Let me see what else is out there, and like almost like the Wally reach. He sees another robot that
Yeah.
kind of looks like him. He's like, "Whoa, where'd you come from?"
Yeah.
And he,
It's yeah, totally. I think that there's just this idea that you know the idea of connecting with people or finding people is like, I don't know. I think it's a really beautiful, hopeful thing in a world where like they're constantly finding new ways to sort of separate people and divide people and keep people apart and
yeah,
and replace people, and whether that be like at your job with like AI and automation, or just like in public places. I mean, it's just like, I live in New York City. Like, there's just a war on public spaces where people can meet. There's just a war on people getting together and talking.
yeah,
And it's it happens online too. It's places that we thought were like virtual community spaces online, you soon find out are not that at all. And so I think being the person who's like I wants to make that connection. Yeah, I think there's a lot of hope in there, and I think what you said about it being the book seeming like one thing and being another is sort of something that we're really trying to do constantly in the book. That we want to not let you ever be comfortable in what you think the story is.
Yeah.
Always be on your toes. So yeah, that's nice of you to say.
Yeah, and even from the contrast outside of Abe, because Abe, of course, is thinking one way.
Mhm.
The other robots, even though we're talking about a vast amount of emotions, the other robots are somewhat happier without
Yeah,
humans. So it's almost like they're almost looking at him like he's crazy. Like,
yeah, yeah.
you want to do what?
Yeah, he's cursed with uncertainty, and he's cursed with not understanding his place in the world. He's a robot who's, like you said, his job is to entertain and to teach people,
Yeah,
and uh, all the robots around him pretty much know what he knows. They're all very smart, like they're all connected to databases and have access to information. So he can't really teach anyone anything, and he doesn't entertain anyone because they all find him annoying. So like he literally has nothing to do, and there's other robots who have stuff to do.
yeah,
There's a bus who drives its route, and there's a breakfast robot who's offering to make breakfast for everybody, but they just don't see the futility in it. And he sees like none of us are doing the thing exactly that we're supposed to be doing, and it pains him. And that's it's a old an old it's a tale as old as time of the person who's cursed with knowledge, but he knows that things aren't the way they're supposed to be, and
yeah,
that haunts him. And the other robots don't care because things are easier for them. Humans are difficult to deal with if you're a
yeah.
robot. They're stubborn and they make things complicated and they change things, and they have impulses and whims which mess things up, and it's just easier for them with things gone, and they're comfortable with easiness, and he's not comfortable with that.
Yeah, and you would think more so based on the programming
Mm-hmm.
of exactly who he is. Like he's not Abraham Lincoln,
Yeah.
but he's learned everything that Abraham Lincoln has done, and
Yes.
more so the policies that he created
Mm-hmm.
were brought to be about togetherness. Like
Sure.
you have to think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Like this is a very small box that we're living in. There's a
Yeah.
large world outside of here. So I can imagine, like I think I remember when the first announcement came out, and I was like, well, why did he pick Abraham Lincoln? And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking into the summaries. I'm like, I see why he picked Abraham Lincoln. It's almost like, is Abe's journey driven by his own programming of basically being Abe, or is it something closer to free will?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. His his journey is, well, I can't get too much into
Okay.
why his journey is the way it is, but I will say, like, yeah, Abraham Lincoln is obviously a figure that is, he's as close to we have as mythology in this country.
Yeah.
He's his face is on mountains, his face is on money. Like
Yeah.
he's this figure, and he's just a beloved figure, and a unifying figure, someone who tried desperately to raise people up, and someone who tried desperately to take people who were not together and pull them together and
Hmm.
bring about unity. And he lost his life because of it. And all of that to me, I love that as a starting point for a character to be like, well, we understand these things about him, but also this isn't him.
Yeah.
This is the robot who doesn't even think it's him. He just, like you said, knows what Abe did and does. And when I was making the book at a certain point, I just had this realization early on that I was like, oh, if his job is to like talk about Lincoln and from a historical point of view, he knows not just Lincoln's life, but he knows how he died, and he knows what came after, and he knows that the country is not unified, that we are not all living in harmony, that is not there's not equality, there's not a lack of oppression, and that to me like really changed the way I viewed the character, because I was like, oh, he's really a tragic figure from the
Yeah.
start.
Hmm.
more so than just a man who was assassinated is a tragedy. Like, this is a man who's now cursed to understand that he died and it didn't complete his job, didn't complete what he set out to do, and he's sort of a martyr, but it didn't work. And so yeah, there is a, when you ask, is it his programming that makes him like this, or is it something else?
Yeah, with free will.
Yeah, is I think that's a question that you're gonna have to stay with in the book for a long
Will.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, for the most part, even just to emphasize, even on that, like Abe is kind of like a parody of humanity. He failed a lot.
yeah,
Like how many times he ran for public office.
hmm,
So it's more so somebody that got knocked down a lot and
yeah,
kept right on trying. So once again, it's like, okay, this is a perfect character to do this
hmm,
because it's a parody of humanity. It's a tribute to it, and it could possibly even be a critique of it.
hmm, yeah.
Now, what does it mean that a replica of a human is the one searching for meaning in a world without humans?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in some ways it's about. I mean, it's sort of his tragic story is that he's recreating something he doesn't know and doesn't understand, but
Mhm.
also he's made by humans.
Yeah.
And so we've made a thing that is, none of the other robots really look like humans. He's
Hmm.
the only one that looks like a human. So of course the one that we made in our image feels the loss of us the most. It's really like he's the only character who mourns humanity,
Yeah.
really. And and so his quest and his goal, like, I don't know. I think that there's something. Sometimes I feel like it's really hopeful. Sometimes I feel like it's really optimistic. That I'm like, oh, the thing that's in our image lives on and carries a flame for us. And sometimes I think it's really sad. It feels like sometimes I feel like Abe is like the dog that runs away and then the family moves and he comes back to the house and he can't find it.
Yeah, there's nobody there.
There's nobody there, and he just, that's all he knows. And that like, I'm sort of torn between those, and I think the book is sort of torn between those things. I think you see both of that in Abe, that he's optimistic and hopeful, but also sad
Yeah.
and broken and damaged, and it's his quest to figure out which one is correct, where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure. And even in the world well, obviously you built Andy
Mhm.
McDonald and Francesco Segala,
Mhm.
how were able to correlate this entire world of how it looks in
Mhm.
this, although it's like enormously huge,
Yeah.
very vast, but also empty.
Yeah.
So you have, how does the emptiness of the world that you basically built function as a character itself?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the credit of that has to go to Andy, whose art is just amazing, and he's great at just mood and tone and creating space. I think so many comics these days, like, don't do space well. You don't get a sense of atmosphere. You don't get a sense of the world. You just get a sense of a room or some characters in a room. And yeah, I mean, there's parts of Abe's life that he goes through that are busy. There's parts where it's crowded. And credit to Hassan, our letterer. Like,
Yeah,
he came up with a brilliant thing where the robots are all talking all the time, but they don't even talk in the same balloons. Like, they don't.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, like they're talking, but like it's just not quite the same language. Like, they can
Hmm.
understand each other, but it's just a little off. And that, to me, like, I love that detail of it. And it goes the same thing that Andy goes to in the art of just like, the a place can be busy and full and still you can still be alone in it. And so yes, there's this huge world, there's this huge city that Abe travels through and sort of haunts and wanders through. And sometimes it's busy and sometimes it's completely desolate and there's no one
Yeah,
there. And I think very much what you find is that those aren't different for him. That the crowd and the empty spaces, they're the same thing. And to me, like, I grew up in New York. Like that feels like New York to me. That feels like New York. Like Times Square is as lonely a place as a random street corner at 3 a.m. Like
Hmm.
you're just like no one here is connecting. No one here is talking. Everyone here is moving past each other.
Hmm.
And so we really wanted to make that feel like a big part of his life, and a big part of what he interacts with is just emptiness.
Right. Now, and the funny thing is, it kind of like sets the stage for that cover art that
Mm-hmm.
Andy created,
Yeah.
to where you see Abraham Lincoln, as tall as that robot possibly is,
Yeah.
looking this big,
Mm-hmm.
and that world landscape looking enormous, all built in through that rectangle.
Yeah. Yeah, all of the covers for the series are about the world, Abe being small in a world that's much larger than him. Like that was early on an idea we had of just create these monuments to human ingenuity and to progress, and later to the environment and the planet. Create these giant monuments and then let us see how inconsequential we are standing before them, and how powerless we are, and how impressive they are, but also how small it feels to be there. And I think about that sometimes when whether it's like thinking about space, or looking out at the ocean,
Yeah.
or whatever. You're just there's something beautiful about feeling inconsequential. There's something beautiful about feeling insignificant.
Hmm.
And so we really wanted to evoke that as much as possible, of just like the passage of time, and the scale of the world, and all these things sort of weigh on Abe in a way that he knows that he's just the tiniest piece of a big world that he doesn't understand.
Now, to go back to what you spoke on briefly about the languages you created, especially
Mhm.
through the robots. Now, the small details
Yeah,
that you've given robot voices or behaviors, adding realism to the settings. It's almost like a cane corso having a conversation with a poodle.
yeah, yeah,
It's just like two different species of dogs, but
yeah.
they understand each other. They know they're
Sure.
going in the same direction. So, like, how are you able to create that? Because Abe is one setting. We know his language,
Yeah,
but yet everything that's wrapped around him, he understands it, and
yeah,
we understand him almost in
yeah.
the same breath.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the credit of that, I think, has to go to Andy, because Andy, when we brought him onto the book, I said to him earlier, I said, Abe is the only human-looking robot. And he said, "Oh, what do the other robots look like?" And I said, "Well, they're all different." And I think for a lot of artists, that they just hear that and they go, "Oh, you want me to design 600 robots?" Like, absolutely not. I quit. It's so much work, and it's brutal. But Andy is a special kind of genius who loves that kind of thing, and so he just ran away with the idea of designing these robots, and creating, that no two look alike, that every single one is different.
Yeah,
And he just like lives and breathes that stuff, and I think it really creates this feeling of I think there's a way to do the story where everything looks the same and Abe just looks different, and it makes sense and you understand it. But there's something even more haunting about how everything looks different from everything else, and yet still you don't fit in. Like, you would think the uniqueness would mean that everybody is equal, but he doesn't. Abe is still the only human looking one. They don't like him because he's human looking, and they judge him. And so, like, there's just this. I mean, I think the cane corso poodle thing is like the perfect analogy. That it's just like, I don't know, when I'm in the park or whatever, and I see a chihuahua and it's freaking out trying to fight a giant Rottweiler. You're just like, what is that experience for the chihuahua? Like,
exactly.
what it can't does it think it's the same thing? Like, what would it be like for me if I went outside and there was a 22-foot tall guy and I was like, I'm gonna fight that guy? Like, that would be so crazy. And that's sort of the world Abe lives in all the time. That it's like everything is a different breed, and it's like, well, we're all robots, but no one cares that we're all robots. They just care whether they like you or not.
Definitely. Now, human emotion, of course, plays a big tool in this as well, because essentially Abe is going through a bout of loneliness, which is a
Yeah.
human condition. So is loneliness described as a core trait that persists in just him?
Uh,
And why is that so central?
I don't think loneliness is necessarily a core trait for him. Maybe it is. It's central to the. I mean, I think Abraham Lincoln is a lonely character in history.
True.
Um, he's by all accounts was sort of a very troubled, sad. A lot of what happened weighed on him, and there's a lot of things that sort of make him feel like a very lonely figure. But more than that, I think that loneliness for Abe is it's what makes him question everything
Yeah.
because he's also at his core someone who solves problems.
Yeah.
He's someone who rolls up his sleeves and gets his hands dirty and figures out how to fix things. And the thing that needs fixing is him.
Mm.
And so this is him coming to terms with that. And so that was a big part of it is trying to figure out what's wrong with our character that he's going to solve, that he can solve, and the answer is that he's lonely, he's alone,
Yeah.
and he doesn't know why.
And it's in the I guess in the grand scheme of things, he's like a introverted extrovert.
Uh-huh.
in,
Yeah,
in a sense. It's like Frodo in the beginning of the story of The Hobbit, where it's like, you mean I gotta meet elves and people? I've never been outside the Shire.
yeah, yeah, exactly. He's friendly and he talks too much and doesn't connect with anyone.
Right.
And like, you see that all the time. Like I see, you go to a coffee shop and there's a guy sitting on the counter and he'll just start talking to whoever's next to him.
Yeah.
And like in some ways I'm like, oh, I'm really jealous of that person. Just the ability to try and connect with people is really beautiful. And on the other hand, I'm like, I don't have to do that because I have people I have connections to. So like how lonely is that person that they're just like, the only thing I know about you is that we went to the same coffee shop. Like, let's talk. We're in the same diner. We're both at it getting a bacon, egg, and cheese. Like, let's talk.
Yeah.
And that's sad. And it's both. Yeah, it's both beautiful. It's a beautiful attribute and a very sad attribute to me. And I struggle with finding what I think about it. And I see that in Abe too.
But see, that's okay because you putting this book together, obviously you collaborated with your brother,
Hmm.
and which adds a tone and depth to the story that both of you were able to collab on
Yeah.
and speak about to great detail to how you were basically crafting and putting this book together.
Hmm.
How did that work?
Yeah. So my brother, he's a screenwriter and a director by trade. That's what he does. This is his first comic, and we knew we wanted to do a thing together and make something together. He wanted to make a movie. I wanted to make a comic. I won, and it's it's really great to collaborate with him because and so I love my brother and I think he's an amazing talent and I think he has an amazing head for story,
Yeah.
but also he's very different from me and people who know us are always sort of like amused by how different we are. And I said this to him the other day and he was like, I don't think we're that different. And I was like, we're very different, like the way we interact with people, the way we think about things, the things we like. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, we don't like the same movies, we don't like the same bands, we don't like the same food, like we don't like most of the same stuff. And I think he was a little put off by that I was like, we're so different. And I think it's really great. I think it's
Yeah.
really like I think it's great in general to just be like very unique and still have a bond and a connection. But I also think for this book, it's great because we bring very different things to the book and the way he thinks about like from the biggest pictures of the way he thinks about story and the way I think about story to the smallest details of like dialogue and the way a character says a line and we discuss everything. We go over every single panel, every single line of dialogue, every single piece of art in detail because we both know that the book is going to be best if it's an amalgamation of both of us. If it's both of us doing an idea that when we don't agree, we have to sell the other one on the idea that
Mhm.
the best idea will win. And so the book is just full of what both of us believe are the best ideas. And maybe they're not all my ideas. I mean, they're definitely not all my ideas. They're definitely not all his ideas, but it is definitely this really intense collaboration that I'm very proud of and think is very fun.
How does that sequence of idea sharing go? Is it more so like you're writing things down and you're like, here, man, read this?
No, it's I mean it's always changing. He's really busy and I'm really busy, so like there's not a set format, but I mean it started years ago, like I said. I live in Upper Manhattan. I live in Harlem and he lives in Brooklyn, and I would take the train to his house twice a week and just
Okay.
spend 3 or 4 hours just like talking about ideas. And we were doing that twice a week for months and months. And then it became writing documents and sending them back and forth, and then it's writing it. But literally everything, there's not one of us does one thing and then the other touches it. It goes back and forth. Like some of the scripts are me and then he does a pass and then I do a pass, and some of the scripts are him and then I do a pass and then he does it. And that's true of everything, that there's no final say, there's no first person to touch anything or last person to touch anything. It's just when we all say this is good, then it's done.
That's actually fantastic that you actually got a chance to. Now, who presented the idea? Did you present the idea to him?
I did, yeah. I don't know. I feel weird when I talk about it because it sounds like it's not a way my brain normally works, and it sounds like goofy to me.
Hmm.
But I like to just wander at night. I like to just go out and walk. I'm a big walker, and like I was walking late at night one night and just had this image of just the animatronic Abraham Lincoln like walking through a city that no one else was in. And
Hmm.
I thought it was really funny and weird. And I'm not one of those people who has visions or like, I'm not one of those dudes. I'm not a wizard. I'm not one of those guys. But like, it was just in my head and it made me chuckle. And then I was thinking about the next day and I was like, yeah, the animatronic just like in a world without people, like what's he doing? And I just kept coming back to it. And it was sort of with me for months before I finally brought it to Mark and was like, what do you think of this idea? And he was like, I think it's really visually interesting because he's a very visual thinker. I'm not such a visual thinker. So
Hmm.
he got it immediately in a way that I think if it was reversed, I'd be like, I don't really know what you're talking about.
Right.
But because it came to me as this like fully formed visual idea, I could bring it to him, and he got it and it was like, yeah. And I said, is that something? Do you think we could make a book from there? So it was just this one idea of like Abraham Lincoln, robot Abraham Lincoln in a world without people. That's all I brought to him, and from there, a lot of back and forth, and it went a lot of different directions. I mean, we have notes that are like a completely different book essentially, but
Mm. Hey,
yeah.
now, in is Hope in this story portrayed as rational or as a necessary illusion?
I don't think it's rational at all in this world. I don't think the world doesn't think Hope is rational, and I think as you spend time with Abe, he starts to think it's not rational as the book goes. I talked before about how we're trying to subvert what people think the book is. And I think, and we don't want people to like ever feel like, oh, I know what's going to happen next. I know what that is just from an idea. I think you'll see in issues 2 and 3 and 4 that like hope is not only not rational, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Like hope is dangerous, and Abe gets addicted to it, and it starts to tear him apart.
Mhm.
And so that's a big thing. Like, yeah, I don't think there's a version of this book where Abe doesn't hope
Yeah.
that there's any connection for him, and he just has a pretty content life and just goes on living. And maybe our journey is happy and maybe it's sad at the end, but it's very dangerous and it's very crazy, and it's all because of hope.
Yeah. And even the aspect of the other robots, the way you were talking about it earlier, they're just mimicking life. Like you
Yeah,
said, the one is just a bus, just
yeah,
going on its regular their route. They're doing life. They're mimicking life in increasingly convincing ways.
yeah,
So it's like you guys are stuck in this matrix too.
yeah, yeah. but there's something, there's something nice about not caring.
True.
There's something comforting about not noticing all of the bad things about you, and it's easy. I mean, I think that metaphor can speak to a lot of things, and whether it's your personal life or the political world or whatever it is, there's a very easy way to just be like, or your job. I know a lot of people who are just like, yeah, at 5 o'clock I punch out and I go to the bar and I'm
Yeah.
drinking, and that's what it is. And they don't have the hope that like my job's going to get better, or I'm going to find a different job. They're just don't think about it.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people who that's the situation for them in their personal life, or that's the situation for them politically, and so yeah, I think there's a world where the mimicking life, the going through the motions of everything
Yeah.
is comforting.
Yeah. They're more so representing people that, shoot, I definitely know.
For sure. Yeah.
That everybody knows. Everybody that's basically like, no, this is my hustle and bustle of every day. I have a routine. This is a
Yeah.
routine
Yeah, yeah.
for me.
The routine. Look, a routine is comforting. I get it. Like I have a routine. I have stuff I do every day. It's great. But sometimes you need to break out of that because it can't be everything. And so Abe is there breaking their routine a little bit. He's reminding them of things they don't want to think about. He's questioning things they don't want to question. And so it's this divide because it's like, well, he's a disruption in the routine.
Hmm. That's true. Now we talked a lot about the emotion of the book,
Hmm.
and we talked a lot about hope being a scary thing. We talked about the factness of being in a bleak society, uh, even like dread and curiosity. Is there an overall emotion of the book, or would you say it's a channel of things, issue to issue?
I think. Um, I mean, maybe it's possible that optimism and hope are the overall feeling of the book, but we go to places where that's not going to be so easy to find. It's not going to be
Sure.
so easy to see. Um, but I also think, I there's a type of comic that we don't make so much anymore. That when I was a kid was very big. There were these
Yeah.
comics where you would just fall in love with a character and go on a journey with them and just be like, it's not so much about the end fight. It's not about this big idea that they're trying to fix. There is a big idea, but also like I just want to spend time with them every month. I just want to go see them. And there's a lot of books that I love that were like that. And I was talking to someone about this the other day about this idea, and I realized that like The Walking Dead is a book like that. The Walking
Oh yeah.
Dead was never they're going to cure zombies, they're going to defeat them. That was
Yeah.
never anyone's mission.
We
The
got to
mission,
work our way around this.
yeah, the mission was getting through, like finding their
Yeah.
journey. What is their life? And I love that. And I think the audience loves it. I think there's a world where people really crave that, to be able to go every month and spend time with some characters you care about and get to know them and just follow them and see, and it's our job as the creators to shake that up and make it interesting every month and to change it and give you new settings and new characters and new ideas. And so in that way, like the book is going to change tone, and the book is going to change the feeling and the mood. And like there's horror moments, and there's pure comedy moments, and there's very weird sci-fi moments, and there's very sweet human moments, and all these things, emotional moments. But I wouldn't say human, but emotional moments. But at the core of it, I think yeah, just optimism is probably the underlying thing.
True. Yeah, no, no, I would definitely think that because, especially due to the fact of sometimes, optimism is great until you see the first thing negatively and it shocks you.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
like, you think of it like us growing up as kids, like, we probably grew up in just a world full of joy until we saw the first negative thing
yeah.
for the very first time. And it's like, what the hell just happened?
Uh,
Like that type of deal. That's why I always felt like Stephen King always had like child like characters in all of his books
yeah,
because
yeah.
it was like that reaction is what I want every single
Mhm.
time because from a human place it's like people are desensitized. It's like they
Yeah,
see it and they're like but from a kid they're gonna
yeah.
be like it's a total shock.
Yeah, I mean, like we're taking Run Down with us, and I do a lot of books about kids for that
Yeah,
exact reason. That
yeah,
like I really feel like that moment where you're feeling your innocence get torn away. It is such a, and I don't think everyone has it, but like when you talk to people who have that moment where they know what it was, where they're like, I saw this thing or this thing happened to me, it is so much a part of them. It is such a like, it's a part of them as much as,
The
you
core
know,
memory.
yeah, it's as much where you grew up and who your friends were and what, you know, what your house was like. Is just like that moment will define you as an adult so much. And so yeah, I go to that a lot of just that the innocence, and I think, you know, it's again, I think why Abe is a good character for us, because he's an optimistic character. He's a childlike optimism to him, but he also, you know, like the way we talk about him, and a lot of it is because we, again, like we sort of have put him on a pedestal that's like
For sure.
mythical. But you know, he's honest Abe. He doesn't tell a lie. He has all these attributes that we think of as very like childlike and innocent. That he's very sweet and quiet and humble and thoughtful, and like he the way people talk about Abe Lincoln is the way people talk about children. And so yeah, he's this protagonist who's a child. It's, in a lot of ways, he's going into this world and going to have the you know, the blinds ripped back, and he's going to see things he didn't understand and experience that, and what he does with that, and what that core memory, how it affects him and changes him, is our story.
No, that's definitely that's definitely where I would see it going. Now, if your brother ever really wanted to get a chance to turn this into an adaptation, what do you think he would do with it? If you knew him well, what would you
Yeah,
turn
yeah.
this into?
You know, what's funny is that when we talked about it early, there was a lot of talk about trying to do the book smaller,
Hmm.
do it contained, and not like make the story smaller and make the scale of it smaller, that you don't see the whole city, you don't see all these crazy robots. And I think he had this vision of doing it as like, you know, a sort of like homemade kind of sci-fi movie that would feel like almost like childlike.
Yeah.
I think there's this sense of just like, well, how could we do this like with a lot of spare part, like rather than like build a CGI robot, how do you like glue metal onto a person and make them look like a robot or whatever? And I think I really loved that vision of it, and we worked on that vision for a while. And then at a certain point, I was like, "Look, the thing that's wonderful about a comic is that it costs the same to blow up the Earth as it does to have two people in a coffee shop. Like,
Right.
we're doing this big thing. Like, let's keep some of these ideas of the smallness and the quietness of the idea that we have that could be a movie easily. Let's keep it, but do it huge. Like, let's put it on a big stage." And so I think there's a version of it that we could go back to for a movie, that my brother could turn into a movie that would be the small, stripped down version of, you know, a guy in an Abraham Lincoln costume on a bus talking to the bus. And it's just like, well, that's fun, that's great,
Yeah.
but it's just for the comic, we just scaled everything as big as we could.
Definitely. And directed by John Hughes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that type of deal. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I think from the time that we were scheduling this podcast, of course, you became the now transitional quintessential writer for Spawn.
Yes.
Um, for one, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. But and also in the same sense, I was thinking in my head once that was announced, I was like, I wonder how that whole thing went down. Like, was there like a bunch of writers in a hallway like actors do, like all giving their elevator pitch
Mhm.
for Spawn, reading their lines down before they went in there and met Todd McFarlane to like be like, all right, if I'm going to take this over, this is how it's going to go. Just start rambling off.
If there were, I didn't see them. I don't know. So the actual way it went down, um, I'd been at I've been working at DC pretty heavily for the past couple of years, doing a lot
Yeah.
of stuff there, and I love DC and love working there. But I just hit a point where I was like, I think creatively, I can't. My heart's not in it as much. It's not that I don't love it, but like I need to go do something else to get re-excited about this, so that I can be doing my best work at DC. So
Hmm.
I talked to them and said I want to just make my own stuff for a little bit, and they're very kind and were great and said, yeah, when you're ready to come back, let us know. And so I stepped away and I was just going to make my own books. And this book is, I'm doing a sequel to We're Taking Her Down with Us, and this book and doing some other stuff. Finishing my other book, What's the Furthest Place from Here? Like, we have a few issues of that left to put out. So all of that and some other projects that are going to be a ways down. And then I got an email from Todd McFarlane's assistant that was like, Todd wants to have a call. And I had no idea why. And I was like, well, I don't know what this is going to be. And basically we got on the phone and I was very excited. I was like, I'm going to try and get Sam and Twitch. That's the book I want. I want to write Sam and Twitch.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I was like, I had some ideas and thoughts on what we could do with Sam and Twitch, and I started to bring it, and before I could get anywhere, he was just like, well, what do you think about Spawn, about taking over Spawn? And that was it. Like, I was like, oh, that okay, that,
yeah,
and that, yeah.
There was no excuse me?
Yeah, I mean, there was probably a lot of me trying to play it cool and doing a terrible job to Todd. But yeah, I mean, when Todd calls, you answer. He's the legend. He's the man. And when he offers you the big chair, like, you take it and you figure out if you could do it later. So that's where I was for a while. And my first idea I sent him, I was like, okay, this is really good. Like, I pulled out all my issues of Spawn and was like looking at some favorite stuff, and I was going, poking at some of the like miniseries and stuff I hadn't read, and I was like, yeah, I think I have an idea, and I brought it to Todd and was like, okay, and he just was like, no. and I was like, that, no, and he was like, no, I don't like this, and I was like, okay, and I sort of poked him and I said, what don't you like about it? This feels like right to me. And he said, this feels like you're doing me. This feels like you're trying to do what I've been doing for 30 years. And I said, well, yeah, that's the tone of the book. And he said, no, if I wanted the book to read like I wrote it, I'd write it. I'd keep writing it. And he's like, I want it to read like you'd write it. What is that? And I was like, and that to me was like a lightning bolt. I was like, oh, that's it. That's everything. Like, that's when you make stuff, that's all you want to hear from the people who hire you to make stuff. So
you're giving me a green light? Sure.
Yeah. And so I just went back and I said, how crazy do you want it to be? And he said, I texted him. I said, how crazy can I make this? And he said, make the book that you would make if you created Spawn. What would that comic be? And I was like, oh, okay, so that is, and I sent him a bunch of like, I want to do all this stuff. And he was like, okay, let's go. And that was it. And so then I put together a pitch and an outline, and it was very big and ambitious. And he called me and he was like, this is really big. And it's, it spilled over out of Spawn into King Spawn.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is kind of a pitch for 2 books. And I said, yeah, if we can find a writer who I can work with well, and just be like, hey, this is some of the stuff that has to happen. And he said, why don't you just write both? And I was like, well, I wasn't pitching for 2 jobs. And he's like, no, I get that. It's just easier. Like, the vision will be more pure if it's both you. And so he said, can you do it? I said, I can do it. And he said, yeah, then do it. So that's how I ended up here.
This sounds like honestly, he loves your work. You can honestly just tell that in the conversations, and depicting the fact of how easy all this pretty much sounds.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the feedback is just like, no, you just got to be you.
I mean, he's great. He's amazing to work with, and like it's funny because everyone's always like, don't meet your heroes, don't whatever, and it's like,
oh, of course,
forget that. Like, Todd is everything I wanted to be and better. He's so kind, he's so thoughtful, and so like. Every single conversation we have, and I talk to him regularly, every conversation we have, there's 5 things he says that I'm like, I have to write that down. Like, I want to remember that. Like, that's a new way of thinking about comics. That's a new way of thinking about story. That's a new this. And he's just so generous with that stuff and so supportive. Like, it's amazing. I'm very lucky to have this book.
For sure. And also, I guess in the same breath, how comprehensible that it is with your relationship with Image Comics.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, especially with the amount of work that you've done over the past 5 years, to basically now jump into this role and all the while still do the stories that you're doing right now.
Yeah. I mean, Images. I don't know how to exactly say it. Image is not just, I think, the best company in comics for making things. I think it's the best in all of the arts. I don't think any company. I don't think there's a company that exists that is more built to just have artists do exactly what they want to do
Yeah,
and get everything out of the way so they can do that. Like it's not coincidence that Todd co-founded the company, because that's what Todd believes in. He believes that when we make art, you know, if it's purely us, it's going to be the best we can do. And so he built a company with that in mind. And we're 30 years into it, and it's still the idea that drives Image, and it's still everything you want Image to be. It's really awesome. I'm very
excellent,
lucky.
excellent. Well, Matthew, I appreciate the conversation. Obviously, this book has been on my it's already bought. Let's just put that out there already. So it's since you announced it, I think that day was when I was able to purchase it. So it's
Oh,
definitely one I've been wanting to get in my hands since you announced it. So I can't wait till May. Of course, the FOC is coming up. Was it April 13th?
April
Correct.
13th. Yeah.
April 13th. Oh, bad luck day. God. So, but, yeah, April 13th is the FOC. Obviously, the book is released on May 6th. If Destruction Be Our Lot is going to be in stores for everybody to get. I thank you for the conversation. I thank you for what you were able to tell me about Spawn. Obviously, I'd love to hear the plans going forward if we happen to have another chat in the future.
Yeah. I love that, man.
Well, but in the meantime, I cannot wait to see Abe's journey throughout this bleak world. For sure.
Thanks so much, man.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I'm once again, of course, for myself, James Grandmaster Facts Boys, Matthew Rosenberg. If Destruction Be Our Lot is going to be in stores May 6th with the FOC on April 13th. Get that as soon as possible. For everybody here at the Facts Project, we will see you guys next time. We are out.